Hi, I'm Erica Wheelis, food and restaurant marketing reporter at Ad Age, and welcome to another edition of the Marketer's Brief podcast, our weekly discussion about marketing news and trends that have the industry buzzing. Ben & Jerry's recently made headlines when it was announced that parent company Unilever would be spinning off its ice cream businesses. But Ben & Jerry's has long been known for being a proponent of social, political, and environmental issues, which has helped them stand out in a crowded category. In this episode, Ben & Jerry's global head of integrated marketing, Jay Curley, will talk about how the brand takes a stance, advice for brands who want to do the same, how its media mix has changed, and what's next for the ice cream company. Now, here's my conversation with Jay. Okay, so Jay, I want to start here. You have been with Ben & Jerry's for over 16 years. Very impressive. You've been in your current role, I believe, for almost 7. So just high level, when you look back, what do you think is the biggest marketing change that you have seen in the brand over the years?
We have evolved a lot over the last 16 years, and culture has evolved a lot over the last 16 years. It probably sounds cliche, but the way that we have been able to connect directly with fans as social media and how people connect has evolved has really been a game changer for our brand in terms of how we're able to tell stories, how we're able to connect people to movements, and how we're able to get our voice out. And, when I started, we had just kicked up our Facebook page. And so a lot has changed over the last 16 years.
That's a good segue. I'm glad you touched on social media. I am gonna ask about that. Let's talk about just marketing mix in general. Can you give me a little bit of a snapshot of the company's mix right now? Like, what are some channels where you guys are seeing good returns? Any channels where
Mhm.
you're pulling back?
Yeah, over the long stretch of the time period I've been here, it's been less traditional, more digital. Over the last number of years, we still really invest where our fans are, which is usually in social or streaming. So it's a lot of OLV, CTV, social media, a little bit of outdoor here and there. But those are the primary channels that we're investing in from a paid perspective. We also put a premium and we invest a lot in being out with our fans through experiential and events. That's always been part of Ben & Jerry's, going back 40 plus years. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we make delicious ice cream, and the absolute best way to market the ice cream is to get people to try it.
100%. I mean, it's like, you hear it from a friend. It's like, well, just taste it. You'll go from there.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to ask about, because I feel like we can't talk to any marketer. We got to ask about social media. Can you talk to me about Ben & Jerry's social media mix in particular? Like, how do you all think about social? And I guess in particular, how are you thinking about reaching Gen Z? Is that one of your goals on social?
Yeah, I think it always has been a goal to kind of connect with the generation that's really coming into adulthood in their own, right? So it was millennials, now it's Gen Z. And obviously, every generation is unique and they want to be, they want to connect with brands the way they connect with their friends or with other media. So certainly over the last couple of years, short form video, TikToks and Reels have been where we've put a lot of energy and a lot of innovation, and it's gone really well. I think wherever kind of social goes, we learned this early, and actually the early days of Instagram when it was just photography, but was really to try to do our best to kind of inhabit the platforms, understand what people value, and then be able to deliver our own brand voice and our messages through that kind of connection of what they're engaging with and what they're inhabiting. And so whenever new platforms emerge, and certainly TikTok is the biggest one over the last 5+ years, that's the approach that we've taken. And overall, it's gone really well. And we're able to kind of tell our story and connect with our fans on the platform.
I understand that you guys also have you have a Ben & Jerry's podcast. It's called Into the Mix. Why did you guys decide to start a podcast? What does that bring to the strategy?
With audio in general, also a really big platform. It gives the opportunity to tell much more in-depth stories. And I think when we at Ben& Jerry's think about, at the end of the day, really trying to create a more just world, but doing it through joyous actions. And we do that a lot by supporting social movements. And it's not about creating new campaigns. It's not about creating new ways. It's about following the lead of grassroots organizers and the people on the ground that are doing the work. And we've been very successful using social to connect our fans to movements. But it is often hard to get really in depth into the issues. And so the podcast has allowed us to get much more in depth on important topics that are connected to our values and the movements we look to support. And even the evolution of the Into the Mix podcast itself, it's evolved in that way as well. In the first season, we really focused on artists and activists that we had either worked with or were inspired by, people like John Legend, Big Frida, Fabiana Rodriguez, and we talked to them about how they kind of merge art and activism together. And that was a fantastic season. But in season 2, we wanted to kind of take it closer to impacted communities and really hear from people that were on the ground where issues were impacting them. And so we kind of did single episodes featuring folks like that. And then this season, we're going even deeper, right? So we're doing 4 3-episode, essentially mini series where we're really able to go much further into a topic. And what we found is listeners and fans, that's what they're looking for in a lot of ways with audio, is a much deeper understanding and experience. And so we've been able to kind of deliver that through the podcast.
Very cool. I like that of, here's a deeper dive into something that resonates with us. Okay. I'm glad that you touched on this a little bit, because obviously Ben & Jerry's is very known for advocacy, and it can feel a little bit like brands have shied away from being vocal in the last couple of years. What advice would you have for brands who maybe want to be more vocal about their advocacy, and maybe they are a little scared to do it, or they're not sure what's the best way to highlight that? What would you tell them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for us, it's always been a part of who we are as a business and really why we exist. But I think most companies have a reason for being beyond selling a product or service. And so my first piece of advice would really to tap into that and understand the kind of why of why a business is engaging in advocacy work, in activism. And then once you have that kind of truth, it's really about connecting again with the people doing the work and understanding how your role as a business can support their strategies to help them kind of have more impact. So then when you're doing the work, you can have confidence knowing it's rooted in who you are and you're following the lead of the experts in terms of making it happen. And that confidence and understanding can really help as, people want to take shots at you, is to really know it's rooted in you and the work you're doing is rooted in what movements need.
That makes sense. I have heard this from other brands as well. Like, yes, make sure that you have talked to the right people before going into something. I want to double click into that a little bit. Obviously, I think most folks would hear the Ben & Jerry's name and be like, oh my gosh, of course, Ben & Jerry's. Would love to work with you guys. Can you take us a little bit into the process of like, how do you find these like leaders in certain organizations or groups? Like what is there a team that helps you all do that? Like is it just emailing? How do you do it?
So that is one thing where, and again, I don't know how every company does this, but I do think our approach may be a bit unique. We have an activism department here.
Oh,
right?
Wow, I didn't know that.
We have a social mission director, and under that person sits a head of activism. And then in about 6 countries around the world, we have activist managers. Now, these folks come almost exclusively from the NGO movement building side. right? So these aren't marketers who are interested in purpose, right? These aren't poli-sci majors who just think this is a good thing to do, right? We actually embed the experts, the activists, the advocates. So they bring their kind of experience and their expertise to the table first with us. And then oftentimes they come with the understanding and experience around who movement leaders are and who the different progressive NGOs we want to be working with are. And then it is a matter of reaching out, making a connection. I do think that hopefully people take our calls in a way that maybe they wouldn't take everyone's calls, but it is interesting because for the most part, we're working with advocacy organizations that don't work with businesses usually, certainly not ones of our size. So it is often new and different for them and sometimes for us. That's a different way of doing things, but for us, it yields the most impact because we have confidence that we're not sitting up here, even the activism managers who are the experts up here in Vermont, pretending we know what needs to happen. We're understanding from movement leaders what the strategy is and then what role we can play to help deliver on it.
Very interesting. All right, Jay, I want to take a slight left here.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pivot here. Obviously, there was news recently, Ben & Jerry's and the other ice cream brands are going to be spun off from Unilever.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have a sense yet of how that impacts your marketing?
We don't really necessarily know what the end result looks like now. I would say in our four walls now, it's a lot of just really continuing to be who we are. And I think that is the plan in the long term. I think Ben & Jerry's has obviously built a ton of value over the years in sticking to who we are by making, some of the best ice cream in the world and advocating for our values and bringing the kind of fun and irreverence to it all as we do it. I would say that whatever the future ownership looks like, that's the recipe that has delivered tons of growth and value for the business over the last decades. And particularly right now, we're trying to double down on all that so we can continue to be successful.
For sure. I want to stick with Unilever for a moment. I want to and tie it in with the advocacy part. I know a few years ago that Ben & Jerry said that they no longer wanted the brand sold in the illegally occupied Palestinian territories. And against your wishes, Unilever sold the brand rights so it could still be sold there. What were those conversations like inside of Ben & Jerry's when you all learned that?
There was a lot tied into that decision, and there has been a lot litigated since. So I'll probably not comment on the specifics of it, but I think we made decisions based on what we thought were best for the company, and I think Unilever did the same.
Just in general, high level, I think you guys have done a good job of this, but could you talk a little bit about how do you all balance advocacy and sticking with your values and staying profitable, maybe not alienating consumers or, sticking with them? How do you do that?
Sure. I think for us, it's kind of the opposite in the sense that the truer we are to ourselves, the broader, the more success we have as a business. There's a lot of options to buy ice cream. I am pretty convinced there's nothing better than Ben & Jerry's, but there's a lot of great ice cream out there. So customers, they have a lot of choice. When you're buying Ben & Jerry's, you're buying delicious chunks and swirls and wacky names and unique flavors. But many people are also understanding that we're more than an ice cream. We're an ice cream company that has a certain set of values that we try to use our business to bring to life. Now, we do that in our ice cream, right? It's right in how we source the dairy or the fair trade ingredients or paying the livable wage for everyone who makes the ice cream. It's also in using our place in culture and our voice to advocate for the values that matter to us. And I think for those people who don't like it, there's plenty of other options. But for those who get what we're trying to do, that's a much deeper bond than just liking Cherry Garcia or cookie dough. And it means a lot more to us and we cherish it more. And that's really what we try to cultivate.
I like that. Are there brands that you all look at, or do you guys see other brands who you think, wow, we really like their brand mission or their activism? Who are some brands maybe that you look up to?
Sure. I think, it's probably cliche to say, but I think we certainly admire and are inspired by the work that Patagonia does. I think both in the advocacy space and really how they run their holistic business. Our friends at Lush seem to be doing a great job, and we're really inspired about how they can kind of turn their stores into places of learning and advocacy. So those are always kind of the two brands that are very much at the top of the list for us.
Very nice. I mean, good in good company if those are the folks you're
Yeah.
looking at, for sure. Jay, I want to come back to just the ice cream category in general, because I would be remiss if I did not ask. How are you all thinking about the increased use of GLP-1 weight loss drugs?
Yeah, for us, we're paying attention and we're trying to understand where it fits in people's lives and where that fits for us. But we see ourselves as a very premium dessert product. So we're there for an occasional indulgent sweet treat. And so it's something we're aware of and we're watching, but most people aren't habitually using Ben and Jerry's every night. And that's not really what it's for, right? So it's most of our most loyal fans are buying, I don't know, maybe a pint a month or something like that. And they're enjoying it in moderation. And I think in kind of any new world around how people are using emerging pharmaceuticals or just in general, how people are looking at wellness, our role is meant to be a small one always. And so we're there to be that indulgent treat.
Jay, what is your favorite Ben and Jerry's flavor?
So I learned this from Jerry, right? So Jerry told me whenever anyone asks me this, I need to answer it in this way. So my all-time favorite Ben and Jerry's flavor is mint chocolate cookie. And it has been probably since I was like 12. And it is just such a good flavor. It's simple, right? Just mint and the cream cookies. But what I also love are our new flavors, right? So I kind of have my classics that I love, but my favorite new flavor is called Impressively Fudge. And it's got chocolate and it's got this salty pretzel in it. And it's kind of where I'm going to more recently, although please don't tell mint chocolate cookie.
Anything with chocolate and pretzels, I am there. That would be
Yeah.
okay. Looking forward here, Jay, what can we expect to see from Ben and Jerry's in the coming year?
So we did just talk about it, but season 3 of the podcast just launched this month, right? And so the first mini series is out, but there's 3 more coming, and on really important topics, right? On kind of Cancer Alley and what's happening around communities surrounding petrochemical plants. There's a whole mini series on protecting voting rights. And then lastly, there's this broader attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion programming that, this whole anti-woke movement that if we really take a step back is pretty discouraging and is really kind of white supremacy under a different name. So we really are going to try to go deep to expose what's happening there. We have a very big election coming up. And so we are working on a campaign right now that is going to go live September and October that is really going to try to encourage people to get out and vote, and even more so understand really why their vote matters for their values. So that's going to be exciting coming in September. And then we get excited for new flavors in January.
I love it. Okay, Jay, is there anything about Ben and Jerry's, anything I didn't ask you about yet that you were hoping we would touch on? We just haven't gotten there.
We got to talk about really the things that I love and why I'm still here, which is how a business can use its place in culture to make the world a better place. And I think that, and to anyone listening, like that is what, as business people, and particularly as marketers, we can think about the power we have and how we leverage it for good. It's what I try to go do every day here, and why I haven't left this role, because I haven't found a place that I can frankly have more impact on the world, which is interesting to say as someone whose job title is around marketing ice cream. But it really is how we as a company and a culture can make difference. And then when others follow the general approach, that's when real change can happen.
That was Ben & Jerry's Global Head of Integrated Marketing, Jay Curley. I'm Erica Wheelis, Food and Restaurant Marketing Reporter at Ad Age. I'd like to thank our producer, Lauren Chiardio, and invite you to subscribe to The Marketer's Brief wherever you get your podcasts. We promise to keep it brief, or at least short enough for your morning coffee. Thanks for tuning in.
Marketer's Brief listeners get $40 off an adage.com subscription. Sharpen your marketing edge and visit adage.com/brief for your discount.